On my birthday, my grandfather asked, "Did you like the car I sent last year?" I said, "What car? I never got anything." He turned to my parents. Their faces went pale, and the lies unraveled as chaos erupted. My name is Julian, and for as long as I can remember, I learned how to take up as little space as possible in my own home. Some people grow up in noise and warmth. I grew up in silence that felt like a locked door. My mother, Liliana, had a smile she saved for guests, and my father, Victor, kept a proud voice for my younger brother, Raphael. For me, there were polite nods, a plate set on the table, and a reminder to close the lights. Nothing cruel enough to leave a bruise, just 1,000 small cuts that never healed. When I finished high school, my parents announced there was no money for college. They said the economy was tough. They said we needed to be realistic. They said Raphael was at a crucial age and required more support. So I did what people like me usually do. I found a job and kept my head down. A clothing store at the mall took me in. I folded shirts, arranged mannequins, practiced the gentle bend of a smile for strangers, and learned the strange dignity of sore feet. On the nights I closed the store, I walked past glass doors that reflected me like a ghost. I told myself, ghost or not, I would not be a burden. What kept the lights on at home was not the sudden genius of my parents. It was my grandfather, Matteo. He lived in another country after retiring and sent money every month. Rent, utilities, groceries, even a little extra for emergencies. The transfers went to my parents. They said centralizing would be easier. I never asked to see a bank statement. I never asked for anything. I worked and bought my own bus pass and shoes on sale. Raphael slept late, posted photos from restaurants, bragged about shoes that cost more than my paycheck, and laughed when I came home with the smell of fabric and cardboard on my hands. My parents said he was finding himself and that I should be patient with him. I was patient with my brother. I was patient with the calendar. I was patient with the way my name sounded like a cough in our house. On my 23rd birthday, there was a cake on the kitchen table, supermarket frosting, a wilted ribbon. "Happy birthday, Julian," my mother said with that careful smile meant for other people. My father patted the back of the chair next to him and told me to sit. Raphael stayed glued to his phone. They said the cake was from Grandpa Matteo. It was an odd detail. My grandfather never did cheap gestures. He was the type to send a handwritten card with a story and a little envelope of cash that smelled like his cologne. But I thanked them, cut slices, and washed the plates. After my birthday, the house felt different. New bags from boutiques hung on the chair backs. A watch appeared on my father's wrist. My mother used a new perfume and started talking about a beach resort, as if the sand itself had RSVP'd. They went for a week. Just the three of them. They told me the hotel room could not fit another person, and besides, I had work. I watched their photos appear online. Raphael had that lazy smile people wear when they believe the world is a private concierge. I made sure returns were processed correctly and told myself patience was a muscle. A year crawled by on the soles of my shoes. I kept my job at the clothing store. The seasons changed on the racks. The mall music looped and looped until it felt like a diluted prayer. My parents kept repeating that I needed to aim higher without offering a single step. Raphael drifted and never hit the ground. I thought that was the way life was arranged for us forever. Then my 24th birthday arrived. That morning the phone rang and my grandfather's name flashed on the screen. I pressed answer and heard his voice, warm and direct and still carrying that steady mountain air. He said he was in town for work and wanted to take us to dinner. He said birthdays were meant for gathering and good food and impossible desserts. He said to invite my parents and Raphael. He said he missed me. The last sentence went through my ribs like a light. We met at an elegant restaurant where the waiters move the way birds do when they are sure of the wind. My grandfather hugged me, and for a moment the quiet years burned away. He looked older around the eyes, but his gaze stayed alert and kind. My mother and father greeted him with high energy that felt like a costume. Raphael nodded and stayed near the mirror. We ordered. We ate. We listened to my grandfather talk about the city he lived in and how the markets there woke up before the sun. He asked me questions about work that made me feel seen. He asked Raphael about plans. He asked my parents how the house was. Then he asked a question that split the air. He asked whether I liked the gift he had sent the previous year. I blinked. I said I appreciated the cake. He frowned. He said he had not sent any cake. He turned to my parents. His face did not storm. It cooled. He asked again. He said the gift last year was a car. He said it was a modest sports model, but safe and beautiful, and perfect for someone starting. He said it should have been parked under our window last spring with a bow on the hood. I looked at him. I looked at my parents. My mother's fingers trembled against her water glass. My father set his fork down and stared at it as if it could tell time. Raphael looked at the floor and found depth there for the first time in his life. My mother tried to laugh and spoke about a mix-up with shipping. My father mentioned insurance. My grandfather did not raise his voice. He asked where the car was. My parents did not answer. Silence lengthened like a shadow at dusk. My grandfather called the server, requested the bill, and told my parents to take care of it. He told me to walk with him. We stepped outside. The air was cool. My heart pounded without the help of stairs. We sat in his car. He told me what I already knew in my bones and what I could not admit without collapsing. For years, he had sent money to my parents with specific notes for my tuition, my tools, my clothes for interviews. He had entrusted them with those details because he wanted the household to feel united. He had added the car last year as a surprise for his hard work and perseverance. None of it had reached me. If I had doubts before, they stopped being doubts and became facts with edges. He looked at me and put a hand on my shoulder. He said that sometimes love meant keeping people honest, and sometimes it meant removing their access to the choices they abuse. He said he would not let me waste myself for the comfort of others. He said he had space and that I would come with him. He spoke as if we were fixing a broken chair together. Not dramatic, just necessary. A week later, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases that looked smaller than my patience. My parents did not speak to me. My mother stayed in her room with the blinds drawn. My father walked around with loud footsteps. Raphael complained about the noise. I hugged no one. I left the keys on the kitchen counter. The house did not feel like mine, and I felt no need to say goodbye to a building. The first thing I noticed at my grandfather's place was the sound of work. The neighbor repaired musical instruments in his garage, and every afternoon, you could hear small notes testing themselves back into tune. My grandfather's home smelled like coffee and old wood, and stood 3 blocks away from a park where early joggers learned the weather before anyone else. In his garage sat several cars, loved and clean, each one a different version of speed. He told me to pick one. The red one caught my eye. I hesitated. He nodded. I nodded back. We opened the door, and the interior smelled like leather and freedom. We did not talk about the stolen car again. We talked about what time I wanted to wake up. He helped me enroll in a course that aligned with the part of my brain the mall never used. He made introductions at a mid-sized firm that needed someone serious who did not flinch at problems. He watched me put on a new shirt for the first day and checked the mirror angle so the collar sat right. I came home that night, not with miracles, but with the simple exhaustion of having been treated like a person with a future. The firm kept me. I learned the rhythm of deadlines and calendars that mattered. I started saving. For the first time, my sleep felt earned, and not like a coma. The calls from home began 2 months later. I let the first few go to voicemail. Curiosity held the door open one evening, and I answered. My mother's voice used to be made of glass. Now it sounded like paper left in the rain. She said that the money from my grandfather stopped coming. She said the landlord wanted the rent. She said Raphael was trying to find work, but the market was cruel. She said we were a family. She used we in a way that begged for oxygen. I listened and felt a strange calm. I asked where the car money went. She did not answer that. She said we had always done our best. She said I should help. She said I was ungrateful for all the years of support. It is fascinating how people rewrite stories when the ending threatens their comfort. My father took the phone. He spoke like a coach who had just remembered his team existed. He said I owed them consideration. He said the house and the food and the years were not free. I remembered folding shirts while they were on a beach. I remembered the birthday cake that never belonged to my grandfather. I remembered the look in Raphael's eyes when he received shoes more expensive than my month. I remembered the silence I carried every time they asked why I did not try harder while handing Raphael cash for a night out. I asked my father if he remembered any of that. He said I was being dramatic. He said I was too sensitive. He said a lot of things that were not apologies. I told him to ask Raphael for help. I told him I had a life now that did not require me to be a sponge for their decisions. I ended the call. Weeks later, my grandfather told me in a quiet voice that my parents had been evicted. He said he had found out by accident and wanted me to be aware in case they tried to show up. He said he felt grief for the waste of it all, but not guilt. I felt strange that day at work. Not light, not heavy, just steady in a way I had never experienced. I walked to the park after dinner and sat on a bench with a view of the basketball court where teenagers tried to find themselves in the arc of a ball. The sky darkened, and the court lights blinked on. And I thought about how some things only appear when a switch is flipped. Dignity feels like that. You do not see it until you decide to use it. One afternoon, my brother called from a borrowed phone. He did not ask how I was. He went straight into a speech about blood and duty. He spoke about our parents being old and confused. He tried an apology with no shape. I remembered the way he looked at me after telling me to aim higher while wearing a jacket our grandfather had unknowingly paid for. I told him I hoped he would one day understand that effort is a currency and that he had been living off counterfeit for years. I told him I wished him luck. He told me I was cold. I told him I was finally warm. Time moved. I settled into the firm. I arrived early and left when the work was ready, not when someone else's comfort dictated it. I answered emails with care. I learned how to stand in a meeting and present a plan without my voice thinning. I received a review that used the word reliable and felt like I had been handed a real birthday gift for the first time in my life. My grandfather and I made a habit of Saturday morning drives. We took the red car along the coast road. He told me stories of the town he grew up in and how his father made a chair 40 years ago. We stopped for coffee at a place where the barista already knew our order and always added a cookie to the saucer. We did not use many words on those mornings. We did not need them. Months after the move, my mother sent a long message that tried to braid apology with demand. She said they had made mistakes. She said they were under pressure. She said it was all for the family. She said I should understand. At the end, she asked for a small loan to help them restart. I stared at the screen and felt that old familiar ache in my jaw, the one from clenching against words that never fit in my mouth. I typed a reply that was not designed to win any award. I told her I was done being the person they forgot until they needed someone to absorb consequences. I told her that my grandfather's generosity had always been about building me and had never been meant as their wage. I told her the bridge between us had been torched by greed, and I did not plan to rebuild a path so they could cross and take more. I wished them well. I sent the message. I put the phone face down and returned to my work. On the anniversary of the dinner that cracked everything open, I cooked for my grandfather. I used his recipe for chicken that always made the kitchen smell like a promise. He sat and told me the seasoning was perfect. He raised his glass and said he was proud. I said the same to him. Pride felt like a table set for two without any missing forks. People ask why I did not forgive them. The answer is simple. Forgiveness requires truth. My parents never once looked me in the face and said they stole a gift meant for me. They never said they took money intended for my schooling and bought vacations. They never said they chose Raphael every time because it made them feel bigger. They never said the quiet parts out loud. Until they do, there is nothing to rebuild. There is only space where the house used to be and a road that goes forward. I am not interested in revenge. Life took care of its arithmetic. The person who was told to aim higher built a ladder and climbed. The people who thought they could live on easy money ran out of rungs. In the end, I learned something I wish I had learned sooner. Family is not the people who claim you when it benefits them. Family is the person who drives across a city to ask if you liked your birthday gift and listens closely enough to hear the lie hidden in a cake. Family is the hand on your shoulder and the steady voice that says you are not foolish for wanting a fair chance. Family is the person who looks at you and sees not a shadow in the corner, but a life that deserves light. Sometimes I pass a dealership on my way to work. The cars sit polished and bright, and for a second, they look like promises. I do not slow down. I already have what I wanted. It is not the red car sleeping in our garage. It is not the firm with its glass doors and the nameplate on my desk. It is the quiet knowledge that my worth is not a negotiation. It is the fact that when I hear my name at home, it sounds like a welcome and not an obligation. It is a grandfather who says coffee, and I say yes, and we sit outside while the day arranges itself around us. It is known that the switch is mine now, and the lights are on.